Now, page 481. But as soon as they had climbed inside, their hiding place was lifted, tilted, and lowered into a dark space. When the ants climbed out of the holes, they were surrounded by a strange red glow. It seemed to them that every second the temperature was rising. It soon became so unbearably hot and that they thought they would soon be cooked. But suddenly the desk they were standing on rocketed upward, and the two hot ants went flying through the air. What happened? The desk was when the desk that they were hiding inside. What happened? It was lifted. It was no longer safe for them to hide. It was lifted until the like it was shaking, and it went to inside a dark space. Now the ants tried to climb out of the holes, but they were surrounded by a strange red glow like a red light. They found themselves surrounded by a red light in this place. It seems to them that like, the temperature was rising, meaning what they were this place that they were hiding inside, it started to get very hot and very hot until they cannot stand this hotness. They cannot live in this hot. It's very hot. It's getting really hot. But suddenly, the desk they were standing on, the desk that they were hiding on, it rocketed upward like it went up high like the rocket, and the two hot ants were flying through the air, as you can see in the picture here. They went outside and they were flying through the air. Look at the red glow. This is very hot temperature. They cannot stand this temperature. Now look at the two ants again. They landed near what seems to be a fountain. They landed for them. This was a fountain like a rushing water. This was a fountain for them. It's a strong rushing water. Pouring from a silver tube. The fountain was pouring from a silver tube. This is a silver tube, like the top. The top. It has this the sink. Okay. So the fountain was coming from the silver tube. Both ants had a powerful thirst and longed to dip their feverish heads into the refreshing water. Now the ants, after all this journey, they were very thirsty, and they had fever. When you have your head like you feel feverish, like it's fever, and you want to put your head under the water to feel fresh and calm. So that's how also the ant felt. They quickly climbed along the tube. They wanted to drink water and to want to put their heads under the water because they had fever from all what happened. So they quickly climbed along the tube. As they got closer to the rushing water, now they finally about to come next to the water. They want to drink and they want to wash their heads, to put their heads under the water. They tightly gripped the shiny silver. They kept on holding the the surface of the fountain and slowly leaned their heads into the falling stream. They started to slowly put their heads under the falling stream of water. But the force of the water was too much strong for them. Like the ants were too tiny, and the water was strong and it was rushing very, very strong. So when they put their head under the water, what will happen? They will fall down because the water is strong and they are tiny, yes? So the tiny insects were pulled out of the fountain and plunged down into a wet, dark chamber, like a room. Now the water took the ants into a wet like full of water. Dark chamber meaning dark room. They landed on a half-eaten fruit and other soggy things. They landed on half-eaten fruit, and like now they stayed in a a place where they found eaten fruits and dirty things. Okay. Suddenly the air was filled with loud, frightening sound. They started to hear frightening, scary sounds. The room began to swim. The room that they were inside started to spin, to turn around and around. The ants were caught into a whirling storm of shredded food and stinging rain. Now they are in a whirling storm, a dirty storm of, not dirty storm, but like a spinning storm of shredded food and stinging rain. Everything was, they are, when inside around them was dirty and stinging, yucky. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the noisy and the spinning stopped. So suddenly, quickly, the noise and the spinning stopped. Bruised and dizzy, the ants climbed out of the chamber. When you found yourself in a spinning room, when you come outside the room, you will feel what dizzy. You cannot move. You feel dizzy and bruised, like they were full of hurts. They were hurt. They were hurt and they are dizzy. Okay. In daylight once again. Now it's the daylight once again. They raced through puddles and up a smooth metal wall. In the distance, they saw something comforting. Two long, narrow holes that reminded them of the warmth and the safety of the cold underground home. They climbed up into the dark openings. So here, the daylight came again, and they raced through puddles and up a smooth metal wall. Through the water, they raced up, and they went to the smooth metal wall like shiny surface. In the distance, they saw something comforting. They saw something that they really like. What did they see when they were going? They saw two long, narrow holes that reminded them of the warmth and the safety of the old underground home. They remembered their home where they would stay with the ants together in the underground, because the ants, they always stay in the underground. So when they saw these two holes, it reminded them of their old home. They climbed up into the dark opening, but there was no safety inside. They didn't feel safe. It wasn't safe inside. A strange force passed through the wet ants. They were stunned, senseless, and blown out of the holes. Something pushed them outside the holes. It blew them away. Like the bullets from the gun. Their ants were pulled like bullets from the gun. Imagine there was something strong. When they landed, when they stayed down on the floor, the tiny insects were too exhausted. They were so tired. They crawled into a dark corner and fell fast asleep. They tried to find a dark corner, a dark place, and they wanted to sleep, only they were so tired. When this thing pulled the ants from the two holes, like the bullets from the gun, see how they're flying? And now they are tired and exhausted and they cannot move, so they slept in a dark place, as you can see here. Now what happened? Now the night had returned when the battered ants were awake to a familiar sound. Now they started to hear a really a familiar sound that they heard before. What do you think the sound is? It was the footsteps of their fellow insects. Oh, they returning for more crystals. So the insects returned, all the scout ants. They returned again for more crystals. They want to get more crystal. So the two ants slipped quickly to the end of the line. They slipped like they were sneaking. They went inside the line of the ants without anyone noticing them. The two ants slipped quickly to the end of the line. They climbed like all the ants, like the classy wall, and once again stood amid the treasure. And now they are in front of the treasure. And what this time will do? Do you think that the ants will stay again in the treasure, or they will go out the ants? But this time they each chose a single crystal and followed their friends home. Now the ants, each one of them took one crystal and they went back home. They didn't choose to stay here again because of what they have seen. It was hard for them to stay away from their houses. Standing at the edge of their ant hole, the two ants listened to the joyful sound that came from below. So from the ant hole, they were hearing a joyful sound, a happy sound that came from below. They knew how grateful their mother queen would be when they gave her their crystals. At that moment, the two ants felt happier than they had ever felt before. This was their home and this was their family. This was where they meant to be. So now the ants are so happy that they returned back home. They wanted to make their mother ant happy, and they will give her the crystals They're crystals that they took uh, from the treasure they found. And they were so happy to return back to their families, to their home. And what do you think the ants should have done this before, or they should have become bad again and they would go to this weird place again and face this big problems? This time the ants felt to be good and followed the rules and returned back to their family and mother ant. Thank you for listening to the story. We will discuss it again, inshallah. So if you have any question, just put it in your mind, just write it down, and you ask me in the next Zoom class. Okay, thank you.